Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. Let's take another trip on the Wayback Machine to go back in time and check out some early reports of cryptids in the news. Before we get into this upload, though, a couple links. As you know, I rely on my Patreon, my PayPal, and my merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Those links are in the description below. Also, Dogman, Frightening Encounters, Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook version. Written by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny, is available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes. The links to those books are also in the description below. Now, I've taken enough of your time. Let's get on with today's upload. Shall we? Wild Man of Newfield, a mysterious woodsman who shoots at folks and likes euchre. Newfield, New York, August 17th, 1879. Only in New York. Newfield has come to the front with a hairy wild man so awful, mysterious, and formidable that he opens up a new field of thought and investigation. He has been seen by some of the most unimpeachable residents of and visitors to South Section. He is described as over 6 feet tall, clad in rough and scanty attire, and wearing a grisly beard that reaches almost to his knees. Although he has chased several fishermen who have invaded his secluded domain in the quest of brook trout, and shot at peaceable farmer near Newfield Station, no active stops have been made towards his capture, and yet he roams at large. His latest and most daring exploit occurred about 2 weeks ago, when he left the gloom of the forest and actually entered an occupied dwelling in the broad daylight. Large and heavy as the wild man is, he glides so swiftly and silently that he frequently is at hand before his coming has been observed. In this silent, ghost-like manner, he is said to have floated into the house of a farmer named Payne. The farmer and 3 companions were engaged in an interesting game of euchre, and were not aware of the wild man's company until Payne felt something bushy touching his back of his head. When looking up, he found it to be the great beard of a strange hermit. Payne jumped to his feet and would have struck the silent visitor with a chair, but he avoided the blow and, with mysterious steps, made his way to the adjoining room and stretched himself upon a bed. Payne followed him and again raised the chair to strike him, but again he seemed to glide from beneath it, and this time he made his exit through a window by gliding snake-like. But as silent as wraith smoke ascends to the blue other, the farmer watched him and saw him leave his premise and enter a patch of woods nearby, and supposed he disappeared for good. But during the evening of that same day he returned and was seen standing under a tree near the house, as though deliberating whether to enter the dwelling. After standing there a short time, he turned around suddenly and ran rapidly back to the woods. The next day, one of the farmer's cows strayed away and started off to look for it. Shortly after he left the house, his family heard a sharp report of a rifle, and in a few moments back came Payne, pale and breathless, and well high noon done. As soon as he could set the machinery of speech in motion, he described in graphic language the cause of excitement. It was an encounter with the wild man. He said he was walking through a small clearing, calling, "Koi boss, koi boss," when, without warning, he heard a rifle discharged close by and felt the wind of the bullet as it whistled over his forehead, through the rim of his felt hat, and through his erect hair. He fell flat upon the ground, partially stunned, and it was well he did, for the wild man, thinking first shot had proved fatal, shouldered the piece and strolled off into the underbrush. This strange episode is at present the theme uppermost all through the South section, and it is said that the posse of hunters are preparing to track the wild man and, if possible, effect his capture, alive or dead. This was from the Ithaca Journal, August 15th, 1879. A wild man reported, San Francisco, California, August 26th, 1879. On Saturday, August 23rd, we met a gentleman who lives on the west side of San Joaquin, about 70 miles west of Hills Ferry, who made the following statement. While in the coastal range about 10 days ago hunting, he and his companion camped on the side of a ravine near the summit of the range. In the morning they discovered smoke lower down the ravine, and upon going out upon the side of the hill to ascertain the origin of it, they discovered an object which puzzled them to name. And as their curiosity became excited, they crept carefully towards it in order to satisfy themselves what kind of animal they had discovered. By creeping upon the ground, they were able to approach within 100 yards, when, to their astonishment, they found that the object which they had approached with the intention of shooting was a man perfectly nude but covered from head to toe, with the most remarkable growth of hair. The hair upon his head and his beard were very long, reaching to his waist, while his body, arms, and limbs were protected by the same natural covering. Hoping to approach and capture this strange being, they attempted to creep nearer, but they took alarm and rapidly ran away, jumping over the bushes in his path like a deer. The two gentlemen decided to remain and camp in the same locality the second night, and they again were rewarded by the sight of the strange being. They were awakened in the night by a sound resembling that caused by striking a flint upon steel, and upon advancing in the direction of the sound, they saw the same object, who appeared to be striking two flinty rocks together. On their approach, he again took alarm and ran away. We have heard reports of the wild man at the vicinity for several years, but the gentleman who makes this statement is the only one we have ever seen who vouches for the truth of this report. The gentleman is well known to us, and he asserted that he and his companion are willing to make an oath to the truth of the statement. Comes to us from the Stockton Independent, August 25th, 1879. Stockton, baby! Nate Diaz. A young man of the mountains, two young Vermont hunters terribly scared. Pownell, Vermont, October 17th, 1879. Much excitement prevailed among the sportsmen of the vicinity over a story that a wild man was seen on Friday last by two young men while hunting in the mountains south of Williamston. The young men described the creature as being about 5 feet high, resembling a man in form and movement, but covered all over with bright red hair, and having a long, straggling beard, and with very wild eyes. When first seen, the creature sprang from behind the rocky cliff and started for the woods nearby. When, mistaking it for a bear or other animals, one of the men fired, and it is thought wounded it. For with fierce cries of pain and rage, it turned on its assailants, driving them before it at high speed. They lost their guns and ammunition in their flight and dared not return for fear of encountering the strange being. There is an old story told many years ago of a strange animal frequently seen among the range of the Green Mountains, resembling a man in appearance, but so wild that no one could approach it near enough to tell what it was or where it dwelled. From time to time, hunting parties in the early days of the town used to go out in pursuit of it, but in the late years no trace of it has been seen. And this story, told by the young men who claim to have seen it, revives, again, the old story of the wild man of the mountains. There is talk of making up a party to go in search of the creature. Comes to us from the New York Times, October 18th, 1879. A hunting wild man. Strange being said to be in the Wayne County woods. The curious person that two hunters found while hunting deer. A man nearly naked and with his skin black with dirt. An escaped lunatic. Starcola, Pennsylvania, November 13th, 1879. Much of the upper part of Wayne County is still an unbroken wilderness and a resort for hunters from all parts of the country. Charles Ames and Franklin Albeln of Rochester, New York, have been camping in the upper woods pond during the last week. On Monday, they were driving a ridge for deer. Their dogs worked off the ridge to the edge of the dense laurel swamp. Ames was standing at the foot of the ridge on the runway, pointed out to him by his guide. The yelping of the hounds and the commotion of the swamp put Ames on his mettle, as he supposed a deer was about to leap out into the open space, and gave him a chance for a shot. His gun was raised, ready to fire, when, to his surprise, he saw a human being spring from the bushes and run rapidly across the opening towards the mountain. He ran in a stooping position and helped himself along a dexterous parting of thick scrub oaks with his hands. His head was bare, and his hair long. The opening across which he ran was several rods wide, where the thick timber began. The strange being ran so fast that the hunter had very little time to note its appearance, but he saw that he was scantily clad, pursuing the wild man. Ames was so startled for the time that the man had reached the woods before the hunter had recovered himself. Then he resolved to follow the wild man, as he believed the thing to be, and if possible, capture him. Shouting to Alben and the guide, the three started in pursuit. The guide said that the man answering the description of this one had been seen before in the region by wood choppers, but not for over a year. For some distance the hunters proceeded cautiously through the woods, but saw no trace of the object of their search. The dogs could not be made to take trail. Finally, the hunters stopped on the brow of a ridge and concluded that to abandon the hunt. One of the dogs had gone off a short distance, and his barking attracted the attention of the men. They walked in the direction of the noise and discovered the wild man crouching in a limb of a tree near the trunk, and about 8 feet from the ground. As the hunters approached, he nimbly swung himself to the ground and ran off into the woods. The guide instantly raised his rifle and aimed at the fleeing man, but before he could fire, Ames struck the gun upward, and the charge passed over the fugitive's head. The guide said he had not realized what the consequences would have been if he had killed the man. The hunters were now more than ever determined to come up with the singular creature they had unearthed. They followed in the direction he had taken until they came to a place where the underbrush was almost impenetrable, and as it extended a long distance up and down, they naturally concluded that the wild man had entered the thicket. They were not long in doubt, for as they walked along the edge of it, trying to find a place where he might enter, he bounded out again within a short distance of Alben. The latter ran towards him, and the grisly creature stood still, as if he had given up the idea of escape. When the hunter drew close enough to touch the wild man, the latter turned and walked toward the thicket again. Alben sprang forward and caught a hold of the man's shoulders, which were naked. Quick as a cat, he turned and collapsed Alben about the hips. Raising the hunter from the ground, he threw him heavily, head first, into the underbrush. Alben maintained his hold, and the wild man fell with him into the thicket, but in an instant was back on his feet again, and tearing loose from the hunter, ran back to the woods. Ames and the guide were but 100 feet in distance, but so quickly had the encounter begun and ended that it was over before they reached the spot. Alben received a sprained wrist, some bad scratches, and a badly bruised side from the severe fall, but the hunt for the wild man continued for 2 hours. All efforts to obtain further trace of him failed. Albin say that the man was nearly naked, the covering that he had being remnants of a corduroy suit. His skin was hard and black with dirt. His whiskers and hair were long, mixed with gray and matted and tangled with twigs and briars. During the struggle in the brush, he made 2 or 3 exclamations that were unintelligible to Albin. What is believed to have been the same man was captured 2 years in Damascus. See, Who Is He, 1877. The man escaped custody while en route to the asylum. That unfortunate creature has managed to maintain an existence in the forest of Wayne County for over 2 years does not seem possible, but such is now believed to be the case. An effort will be made to capture him and have him again taken to the asylum. Philadelphia Times, Pennsylvania, November 20th, 1879. That's awesome, man. Like, that dude, I don't know if you guys, those of you who heard it and remember it, but they caught him, they labeled him a lunatic, and they put him on the Erie Railroad. The guy jumped off the railroad, swam the Delaware, and then just hid out for 2 years. That's awesome. Lake Creek Monster seen, Grizzly Peak, Colorado, 1881. Several miners in the vicinity have reported seeing what has been termed the Lake Creek Monster. This creature is said to resemble a man, except for extraordinary length of his arms and long shaggy hair that covers his body. Comes to us from Treasure Tales of the Rockies. Mysterious Beast, Florida, New York, May 23rd, 1881. A mysterious beast reported to be 8 feet high is said to occupy a cave on Mr. Green's farm in Florida, New York, making nocturnal raids and killing farm animals. The Marion Daily Star, Ohio, May 23rd, 1881. A wild man resurrected, Florida, New York, June 9th, 1881. On the farm of William D. Green, on the road from the village of Florida to Glenmore Lake, not far from here, is a cave inhabited by a nondescript, somewhat partaking of human form. Some time ago, this animal was seen by 2 men named Armstrong and Sullivan, who were at work in a field near the cave. It so much resembled a human being that Armstrong, who was eating his lunch, asked it to take a piece of bread, whereupon it gritted its teeth and fled to the cave, remaining in sight only a few seconds. Several persons have endeavored to trap it, but without success. All who have seen it describe it as being covered with long, shaggy hair. A few days ago, Ira Seabolt, a well-known hunter, chanced to pass the cave and saw the animal lying at length upon a stone wall and shot at it. When a mingled cry of rage and pain, it leapt from the wall and fled to the cave. Mr. Green, on whose farm the cave is located, now has a quantity of hair about 8 inches long, which was cut from the body of the creature by Seabolt's shot. The creature walks half upright and prowls considerably at night, making unearthly noises. There are a variety of conjectures as to what this thing is. There is not a man in the entire section who could be induced to enter that cave under any circumstances. The entrance to the cave is small, but it is said to have a very large interior. Many people believe the creature who inhabits this cave is a wild man, and a watch is being kept over the mouth of the den to see what the manner of the creature is. The affair has created much excitement and considerable nervousness in the section, and the developments are anxiously awaited. People will not travel the road near where the cave is located, and Mr. Green should not sell his otherwise valuable farm at a cent an acre at present, on account of the superstition prevailing among the county's people. Philadelphia Times, Pennsylvania, June 9th, 1881. Also in the Freeburn County Standard in Minnesota, June 9th. A mysterious beast. Emmitsburg, Iowa. Sorry, guys. June 11th, 1881, Orange County, New York, is greatly excited about a mysterious beast which is said to make nocturnal raids around the neighborhood. There is only one person, a Negro, who will swear he has seen the strange creature, but there are scores of persons who claim to have seen evidence adjoining farms and to have heard his unearthly screams when startled by the approach of men. The Negro says that he suddenly met with it at the mouth of a cave on the farm of Mr. Green, and that it stood erect to a height of 7 or 8 feet high, screeched so loudly that it frightened him so that he fainted. When he regained his senses, the animal was gone. Parties have explored the mouth of the cave on Green's farm, and while they claim to have discovered evidence of the whereabouts of some strange animal, they have failed to come up with it. It is said that a dead dog, with his back broken, was found near the mouth of the cave, and part of a sheep's skin and entrails were also close to the entrance. A party is being organized to search for the strange animal, but the Negro will not be of that party. That's from the Emmitsburg, Iowa, June 11th, 1881. A singular animal, Red Bank, New Brunswick, June 28th, 1881. Quite a sensation was caused last week in the vicinity of Red Bank by an appearance of a strange and terrifying animal, which those who've seen it describe it as a gorilla. It was first seen on Tuesday, 14th instant, about 3 miles of Red Bank on the south side of the Little Southwest River by Messenger Benjamin Hubbard of Red Bank, Thomas Muse of Nelson, and another man whose name has not been learned. It was seen again last Thursday near the same spot by Mr. James Powers, blacksmith of Red Bank, whose horse took fright of it. Mr. Hubbard was quite near to the creature and shouted at it, wherein it turned about in an ungainly kind of way and ran off on all fours. It is described a being about 7 feet tall, with arms and legs, running on all fours. The head is of dark colors. The face has features resembling those of a human. The body is a lighter color and covered with hair. When Mr. Hubbard shouted at the animal, it threw one of its hind feet forward with kind of a ladder motion, overlapping its foreleg or arm, and then twisted its body after it and went off slouching manner. It was observed that the creature had no tail, in fact, which gives color to the supposition that the animal is of the gorilla family. Professor Grote, describing the gorilla, says it is no more tail than the professor, while the knowledge of the monkeys have tails and the idea that these external appendages are a badge of general monkeyhood are deeply rooted in popular mind. But apes are as tailless as man are. That comes to us from the Prince Edward Island, Canada, June 28th, 1881. Naked man found, refuses clothing. Tiflis, Armenia, August 25th, 1881. A veritable wild man of the woods has been discovered in the forest near here. He is a human being, apparently, but speaks no language. When found, he was entirely naked, his body, limbs, and face being covered with hair. His nationality is unknown, and as he seems incapable of uttering articulate sounds, it is likely to remain so. An attempt to clothe him met with no success, for he tore the things off with savage energy. That comes to us from the Bucks County Gazette, Bristol, Pennsylvania, August 25th, 1881. A wild man in Idaho. 2 voracious cowboys see and chase a solitary savage of Snake River. Snake River, Idaho, October 28th, 1882. 2 cowboys who just came in from Camas Prairie relate an experience which will probably go a great way towards reestablishing the popular faith in the wild man's tradition. On the first day of this month, 2 cowboys searching for cattle lost in the storm passed over some lava crags and were startled by suddenly seeing before them a form so often described to them. They were so terrified that they sat upon their horses, looking at it in dread. Mustering courage and drawing their revolvers, they dismounted and gave chase. But the strange being skipped from crag to crag as nimbly as a mountain goat. After an hour's pursuit, both young men were so completely worn out that they had both lied down, seeing which the wild man approached them and stopped on the side of the gorge of lava, from which point he regarded the cowboys intently. The latter would not shoot, as they considered it be unjustifiable, though they kept their pistols ready to use. While carefully returning, the complainant thoroughly inspected the phantom of Snake River. Wild man was considerably over 6 feet high, with great muscular arms, which reached to his knees. The muscles stood out in great knots, and his chest was broad as a bear. Skins were twisted about his feet and ankles, and a wolf skin about his waist. All parts of his body were covered by long black hair, while from his head the hair flowed over his shoulders in coarse tangled rolls, and mixed with a heavy beard. His face was dark and swarthy, and his eyes shone brightly, while white tusks protruded from his mouth. His fingers were the shape of claws, with long, sharp nails, and he acted very much like a wild man, which is unaccustomed to seeing men. The boys all made kinds of noise, a sound of which he twisted his head from side to side and moaned. Apparently, he could not give them back talk, so weary of eyeing him, the 2 boys fired the revolver, whereupon the wild man turned a double somersault, jumped 15 feet to a low bench, and disappeared, growling terribly as he went. It is supposed that this is the same apparition that has so often been seen before. The man, no doubt, does as Indians did for substance, and lives on camas roots, which grow wild by acres, and no doubt kills young stock, as many yearlings and calves disappear mysteriously, and nothing but skeletons of them are ever found. The boys at the stock camp are arranging to go out on a scout again to overtake him. When being provided with lariats, they will lasso him and bring him to Haley to deliver him up to the county authorities. There are several general uncharacteristic Sasquatch features in this count: the footwear, the body covering, the claws, and the tusks. What's concerning about the tusks, nevertheless, all appeared individually or in a combination of sightings. There is no explanation. So obviously this thing is not a Sasquatch. Is it man, or is it another kind of creature? Is it possibly a caveman of some sort? Some sort of lost link? Because I've never really heard, we've heard accounts of people, it had tusks and it looked like a Sasquatch. Well, if you see this, what they're describing now, it looked like a Sasquatch, but it had tusks, but claws as well. It's freaking scary. Anyway, that comes to us from the Haley Times, Idaho. Also the Helena Independent, Montana Territory, October 28th, 1882. A wild woman in Missouri, Marvel, Missouri, August 26, 1882. A nude-colored woman, wild as a gorilla, is startling the people of Marvel section. 20 miles out on the Midland Railroad, she has been seen several times, and the last time threw a young lady who was horseback riding into hysteria, and with a grunt not unlike that of a wild hog, jumped up, ran into the forest. At the time of her discovery, she was burrowing into the side of the road, catching and eating crawfish, which she ate, claws, hide, and all. As yet nothing can be ascertained as to her identity, but steps will soon be taken to that end. She is very black and foams at the mouth when angry, like a wild animal at bay. This comes to us from the Globe Democrat, St. Louis, Missouri, date unknown. A wild man in Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, February 9th, 1883. For some time, a wild man has been creating excitement along the line of the Western and Atlantic Railroad. He has been seen to eat dead animals and wraps himself in horsehide. This morning he was seen at Morgansville with a dead rabbit in his hand, biting it vigorously. He had a sack round his head. Citizens attempted to lasso him, but as they would close in upon him, he would make a bound and elude them. He refused to talk. Finally, he bounded into the woods and disappeared. The party has been formed to follow him. New York Times, February 10th, 1883. All right, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the historic accounts of cryptids in the paper. Two of them stuck out. Actually, three. And two of them were from New York. The one from Newfield and the one that escaped and swam in the river that we read about last night, but then was seen 2 years later, actually lived in the wood. Now, New York has harsh winters, and I don't care. The winters probably back then were even harsher. So how he survived is a freaking miracle, a freak of nature, who knows? I mean, how do you survive 2 years in the woods with almost nothing, you know? You are a true survivor, a true wild man. The one in Newfield, how he floated, that was interesting. It's almost like he was supernatural. He floated, he avoided getting hit. Very friggin' creepy. Then the last one that stuck out was the one with the claws and the tusks. You know, if not being 7 feet tall is bad enough, now you're going to give him tusks and claws. Well, screw you. I'm done. I'm just kidding, guys. But, I mean, that's scary. And these accounts are friggin' scary. And I think that they published these to keep people scared, because they knew what they were doing. Government and the media knew what they were doing even back then. And they will continue until we can convince them otherwise. I don't know. Anyway, I hope you guys have a great day, and thanks. I'm crashing tonight hard. And hopefully I can sleep and feel better tomorrow. See ya!